live from the glorious city of Melbourne
and live from the USA.
Your superstar hosts, Michael Sopel.
I'm going to say we play and win a final.
Sam Manhannett.
The top four.
Like it.
Carlton.
There it is. There it is. I was waiting for it.
This is In the Ballpark.
Hello and welcome to another episode of In the Ballpark. I'm Sam Manhannett, of course, joined by Michael Sopel from over in San Diego. How's your week been?
Sammy boy, pleasure to be here as always, mate. Yes, very productive week. We were talking off air before around the fact that it's cooling down in Melbourne. Well, here in the US, it is heating up. Typically, San Diego doesn't get too much over 30 degrees Celsius, but we've been kind of licking around that mark the last week or so. But I know there's probably other areas, Death Valley, I'm looking at you, that might be up, high 40s. The Death Valley, yeah, in Nevada.
Terrifying.
Gets very hot out there, Sammy boy. You want to pack some water and some extra, granola bars or some shit. But yes, no, doing well, brother, and very excited to talk about this round of footy. And it's a little bit of a gabba round in Melbourne.
It is. So 7 out of the 9 games this weekend are here in Victoria, which is very strange scheduling, and including a double-header on Saturday with 2 games at Marvel and a game at MCG in the middle. So a bit of a crazy weekend for here in Melbourne as it does get cool. How was your thoughts on last week? I know we have to brush over it. I know we don't want to brush over it, but the poor Bombers. I don't think I've ever had that sentence before. Never said poor in front of Bombers.
Well, Sammy boy, it was a disappointing performance. There's absolutely no question about it. I think we've been sort of trending in an upwards direction this season, and certainly the win against the Sydney Swans, albeit them being very inaccurate in front of goal. I just thought, wow, maybe we've turned a page here with at least just this kind of gritty style of winning, and just giving our youngsters a crack. I think has really been a consistent theme, and it'll be the consistent theme this weekend as well. And obviously we'll get into the teams pretty soon, but yeah, just obviously it was like 2 step forward, 1 step back. Just you want to put up a good fight against contenders. We know we're not contenders. I think everyone with their right mind switched on would know that that's the case. But even in saying that, Sam, you hope instead of a 90-point loss, it's at least under 10 goals. But yeah, that was just really interesting. It was funny in the post game. Brad Scott, the Essendon coach, he mentioned something around the fact that they kind of thought, look, after half time, we're just going to try and give it a crack, in the sense we're just going to try and just all guns blazing, lack of defence. We're just going to see if we can all out attack. And I was like, okay, well maybe you lose by more instead of less, having thought maybe at halftime kind of the game's already out of reach. So, in that regard, you kind of wonder the tactics around, okay, like, are we trying to protect like maybe a 40-point loss? But I didn't watch the game in its entirety, but definitely if you're sort of thinking, okay, we're already conceding the game, let's try a couple of things because we know we're going to lose anyway. Maybe there was something along the lines of that by the coaching staff, maybe by the players as well in the second half. But yeah, a 90-point loss is a 90-point loss. It's ugly.
Yeah, no, and we haven't seen too many of those this year. Let's move on to some news now before we get into last night's game. And I know this is not footy and it's the other code, the other round ball game, but we still will celebrate, of course, Big Ange Postecoglou for winning a European trophy. First Australian coach to win, I think, a big major trophy like that in Europe in that sport. So incredible feat, especially in the season that Tottenham have played. It didn't look likely. Don't know if he'll keep his job though. He still might be under the chopping board. So, look, we'll see what happens. But it's a big moment for Australian coaches, and I know a lot of coaches say that they take inspiration from him in the AFL. He's a big Blues man.
Wow.
So maybe he could be Voss's successor in a couple of years. But yes, congratulations to Big Ange.
Yeah, it's a great story, Sam. I think he was even talking about his heritage as well. Like he was born in Greece, and then he came over to Australia when he was pretty young as well. And so, and he's been a journeyman too. I remember his obviously his stint at as the Socceroos head coach, and I think he's always seemed to be a really good motivator of men, and I think that he was saying something along the lines of, just wait until my second season. That's when I typically win silverware. And hey, he's continued that trend. So it's always wonderful to see this when Australians in whether it's coaching or as players can win something big on the international stage. It really gets highlighted. And yeah, we haven't had it in tennis for a while. It was good to see, was it Jordan Mailata in the NFL win, as an active player in a Super Bowl. So, yeah, there's awesome stories like this, Sam, and, definitely worth celebrating.
Yep. Now, out of last night's game, before we get into that, we thought the big story would be Bailey Smith versus the Dogs, but
Baslenka.
According to the media, it's Kane versus Bevo. And I just think this whole thing is nonsense.
Circus,
really nonsense. And I know we want to get theatre and we want to get personalities in the game, but that's from the players and not the commentators. We all know this is just a big stunt from Kano to drive his reputation as being this nuisance and this stirrer. And I don't know if Channel 7 want to be promoting this. I mean, I guess now that both it's a competition between Fox and them, they want the stir up, so people will watch 7 to see Kane talking and that kind of thing. And I think it's getting a little breaching the line. Like if a coach can't walk around a ground with Kane stirring him up from the I don't know about you, but I think this is ridiculous.
Yeah, you don't see it too often where there's actually media personnel that are getting banned from rooms. No. I can't remember too often when this has happened. Potentially expats from a club that maybe exited, on the wrong terms. Perhaps that's happened, but yeah, certainly, you don't see this too often, but. Yeah, it's definitely he's definitely enhancing his own brand. That's for sure. And if the station allows him to do it, he will continue to poke the many bears in the game, and there are plenty of them. But then at the same token as well. So he's obviously he's pissed off Bevo in that moment, but then you see before the game, like Bailey Smith is handing Kane a headband, and Kane takes that on the broadcast and, is a massive Bailey Smith fan all of a sudden. So it's almost like he picked a side, Sam, and it's like, this is my narrative. I'm a big Bailey Smith fan, which means obviously we're Bevo haters. So take the opposite side, and it just draws into his narrative weave nicely. So I don't know if it's deliberate, but it does seem like it from the outside. And I just think
your job,
it's not a good look.
Now, you're not the player, you're not the centre of the story, right? You're there to bring the story to us, not be a part of it anymore.
The conduit.
So I just hope that one blows over, and because the fact that we're even talking about it now is doing Kane pretty well.
Right.
So, interesting one. But I wonder if the AFL will bring maybe certain things around that, and because it's a privilege to be on the ground and
definitely
be in a spot like that. And if you're going to instigate, maybe you should be fined, just like the players are. Who knows? Okay, next story too, and from that game and the game before, and it was talked during the week about further stoppages during the game, with umpires being potentially bringing the arc into other areas of the game, especially since we missed the concussion a couple of weeks back. Yeah. We mentioned this last week. That was fair enough to stop the game. That should have happened. But where do we draw the line with bringing in, stoppages from the arc from other parts of the ground? And I think there is an area of the ground that I think that potentially we could use this, because I know when you start doing that, it could become a whole mess. And you want the umpires to be able to make the decisions for themselves. We don't want to see VAR type stuff. In the sense that we'd be looking at something for 10 minutes and it would stop the game. But I have an interesting theory where 2 weeks in a row, so who was the player from last night? Remind me.
So it was Ollie Dempsey.
Ollie Dempsey, okay. And so it was clearly the ball was out of bounds and he's kicked through a goal at a crucial point in the game.
Very crucial time, 2-point difference before he kicked it.
And then the week before, we had the called on the full from off a Carlton defender's foot. McGovern into a shot from Isaac Heaney. Similar point to the ground, interestingly.
Yeah, really interestingly.
And so I think my theory here, if it's inside the arcs, the 50 arc, and it's a boundary offence leading to, so a ball crossing the line, leading to a goal or a scoring shot, I think that should be reviewed like goals. What do you think about that?
Oh, completely agree with this, Sammy. I think this is a great call. I still remember there was another one, ironically, could have even been from the same pocket, where Jeremy Cameron, I think he marked it against Collingwood, and it was so crazy out of bounds that it wasn't even funny. I can't remember if it was actually him marking the ball, or if it was more him kicking from where he kicked, whether it was a play on, but he was so he was already out of the, he wasn't in play, which meant it was technically out of bounds. So I can't remember the exact context to it. I'm sure fans will remember it, but it was an absolute howler, and it resulted in a goal at a crucial time, gave the Cats the ascendancy of that game against the Pies, and they went on and won it. And you look at both of these games, and they were relatively close games, and so it actually hurts the team that's on the receiving end of it. And so, Sammy, this is what I wonder. So if we hypothetically go, okay, well, Ollie Dempsey kicks a goal. Now, as they're taking the ball to the centre, typically there is that review period, right, where they have an opportunity to, if it's, if there's anything disputable, they're sort of looking at it. But I just wonder, they've got all these angles, Sam. Surely someone in the arc box is sharp enough to see that is clearly out of bounds on the full, and they can recall it. They just recall the kick from where it is. Now, I don't know if they recall the kick from the centre of the ground. That's not necessarily fair. I mean, maybe you can argue the whole ground's set up, but is that for such a high stakes goal, is taking it all the way back to where the boundary is for the opposition to then kick the ball out of the defence? Is that too disruptive to the game, or do you think it's justifiable considering a goal is just worth so much?
Look, I think they can, and I guess this is the processes that we need to see, but I think in the moment they'll be able to be so quick at spotting that
you'd hope so.
When he's lining up, they'd be able to stop him.
I see.
Or after it goes. So I don't even think it'll get.
It should get to the centre,
of the ground.
Right. Okay.
So I guess the goal ones are different because they've got to look at all angles, whether it crosses the line. There's so many factors that they go to looking at that. But if they're just looking if it's crossed the boundary line or not, or who it's come off, then that should be a quick process that they can do in the moment and go down to the umpire and go, hey, it's actually out of bounds, arc review, whatever.
Agreed.
So I think that they could be implementing that. Yeah, we've got all this technology and we've got simple ones like that just being missed in this day and age, which I think is stupid.
And it costs teams games. You don't know now whether that costs the Bulldogs a top 4 spot. You just don't know. So they would feel momentum's a big thing in this sport, Sammy. Probably the biggest thing out of any world sports, and that's a killer. That's a killer right there. So got to clean it up, AFL.
And I understand the argument of bringing to slow stoppages. You don't want to be checking everything like tackles and stuff like that. That's where it gets too far the other way, but I think
Right.
this is something that they could quickly fix up.
Quick fix for sure.
And especially now that they're putting the ball technology, if you've got the ball in a 3D space, right, and it knows the edges of the ground,
Right.
surely the ball would, like, you could track the ball and instantly you know whether it's over the boundary line or not.
Right.
So
You would think so.
looking forward to seeing what they can do with that. Okay, round 11, we are in. Beyond into the double digits, and we will take a look at last night's game. So it was the Cats by 14 points at the end at GMHBA. 20 goals, 7, 127. The Cats to 16, 17, 113. Are we in 2009 again? These are the
I was about to say, are we in the 90s, Sam? Like, I remember there was an Essendon North Melbourne game and the scores were like 150 to 144. Like, you are right. In 2009, there were some pretty high scoring games. This is brilliant, right? Like, this is the footy like all fans want to see, but
Yes.
not all coaches want to allow. And so we were talking about this with the Suns and the Hawthorn game last week.
Yes.
It was another really free-flowing game. Now, it doesn't mean that back in the 90s, Sam, there weren't great defenders. Of course there were. You know, you had your Silvanis, you had your Fletchers. You know, that there were, you know, like you just had great... You had great defenders, but also great forwards, and you had high-scoring games, and everyone goes home pretty happy. Even if you lose the game, you're like, well, our team still scored over 100 points. So, yeah, great high-quality game down at the Cattery, and look, the crowd were getting into it. I actually thought the Dogs brought a pretty good army with them. I mean, like, it wasn't completely silent when they kicked the goal.
No, they've done well, because often in the past, especially when the stadium was being rebuilt, they put him in a little corner. They had like 4 rows. For an away team.
And typically it would be like off centre. I know
Yes.
they did that at the
Wouldn't be behind
SCG,
the
which
goals,
used to
yeah.
shit me. Oh my God, like that's ridiculous. Come on. But yeah, no, last night, good atmosphere, Sammy.
Yeah, I definitely would like to get down to a Cats game at some point since they've done the renovations. I think it'd be a good little boutique spot to watch the footy.
Right, and it's a good build up as well across the road from Cardinia Park. There's like this really iconic like fish and chip shop, and like everyone goes there before a game. You get an overfried dim sim, and they've got great memorabilia in there. It's weird though, Sammy. They've got a lot of Hawthorn memorabilia in there, and I don't know how that has stood the test of time. But it's a great atmosphere. It does get freaking cold down there though, but yeah, it's fantastic, and it is true what they say in Geelong. Like when Geelong win, all of Geelong just, everyone's going down to the shop, getting coffee, getting a baguette. Everyone's happy, mate.
Lambies going off. Jeez, that place.
It's great.
Jeremy Cameron kicked 6 last night. Massive. Almost would have kicked goal of the year if that one of the goals in the late stages. If that had gone through. 6 goals for him. Neil with 5, Norton 3 goals, 1, Kennedy with 3, and 25 disposals as well, if you don't mind. He's having a season and a half.
Who's this guy?
Jeez, I don't know.
Where was he from?
Buku Karmas, 2 goals, 1, Vandermeer, 2 goals, Sean Manor. So disposals wise of things, Bailey Smith. So he did put in a decent performance, 33. We didn't really see fireworks until the last 3 minutes, which was a bit disappointing. I think maybe the strategy was not to get sucked into some of his antics or just ignore him for the first part. But I think as the game progressed and got a little bit more intense, that started to bubble over between him and Libba. Max Holmes, 33 and a goal. That's decent. Lib.
And an incredible goal too, Sam. Like, did you see that Max Holmes goal where he took it from the wing and just like 4 bounces and finished? Yeah, he's a star. So
Geelong, and I actually tipped the Dogs last night.
You did?
Looking at the record they had at GMHBA, was actually pretty decent the last couple of years. So turned it on its head. But I think the big argument for that game, which cost the Dog in the end, is they kicked themselves out of it. 17 behinds is inexcusable.
Yeah, really disappointing, considering that they didn't seem to be missing much against the Bombers, but that maybe speaks to more of the gap in competition there. The Cats, they just sort of have this great ability where, they can almost anticipate when sort of handball chains are coming, and they just really clamp down on their pressure, and I think that was really evident last night in that game. But, I mean, again, like if you're going to go in a shootout with the Cats are just one of those, such a well-coached, well-drilled team. They can play this really high-speed, high-scoring affair, but then they can really kind of put the clamps down and play quite a controlled game when they need to as well. Yep. And it often infuriates teams, but like that's just, again, like the strengths of a team that can play tempo footy, and obviously it's going to serve them really well in finals, which now you've got to say with their draw coming up, Sam, they've got a very, very good run home, and some of their harder clashes against top 8 contenders are pretty much at GMHBA Stadium. So definitely keep an eye on the Cats. They can really lock in a top 4 spot.
How many times have they done that?
Oh,
the ride home there.
Time their run, exactly. They can, like what Pat Dangerfield's out at the moment with a hamstring. They can probably extend that from 3 weeks to 5 weeks, give him a longer break, get him really conditioned in time for finals. I mean, they're just humming again. They just seems like they do it every year. They've won those 50-50 games that they needed to. This is one of them. So yeah, no question marks on them. It's just really a matter of how do they manage some of their older players. Mitch Duncan notches up 300. What a player has he been? He kind of flies under the radar, doesn't he? He's just kind of a workhorse, real midfield bull. He kicks the occasional goal when you need him, but just a real reliable player, and one of those younger players in that 2011 grand final, Sam. So another great stalwart for Geelong. But look, Dogs, no concerns there. I just think, as you said, they kicked themselves out of that game, and look, they'll be all the better for it. But yeah, I mean, we'll see where this will sort of rank as the season progresses.
Yeah, potential final preview this one. Definitely not up a final.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
chance.
Moving on to tonight, Friday night, as of recording, 7:40 p.m. Massive game at the MCG tonight. It is called, of course, as Sir Doug Nicholls continues into the second round. It is a special game.
Yes, it is. Dreamtime at the G.
Dreamtime.
We love it, Sammy boy. You were just giving me the hand pass there. That was fully deliberate for the audience at home. We love it. Oh, Sammy, have you ever been to a Dreamtime at the G?
No, but these seems like the games on the calendar that you would like to go to. If you could pick 10 games or something, Dreamtime would be a good game to go to, I think.
And, when Richmond were absolutely dominating in those grand final eras, like I would just go for the ceremony at the start, and I'd go at about halftime, because we weren't a chance, the Dons. But look, it's really special how the players get involved, and I even think there's been Richmond players in the past, like was it Shane Edwards who actually did the full body paint and actually participated in the dance and then played the game. So there's some really brilliant stuff in there, Sam, and these are the real pioneers when it comes to this Indigenous calendar, and now the fact that we've got it extended, 2 weeks worth of Sir Doug Nicholls round, but it all started here. I think this is another one of Kevin Sheedy's brainchilds, and we love it, honestly. And the fact that Essendon and Richmond have kept it to this tradition for so long. And for our international listeners, I actually think it's nice that it is Essendon and Richmond. Obviously, they're two big clubs, but they're also the colours of the Indigenous flag. So it makes perfect sense that they're sort of brought together on it. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, you raise a good point. Like, if you were taking someone from overseas to a game like this, I think it'd be a fantastic, cultural, this is Australia. This is what we're about. So. And
Sam, what about the long walk to the G as well?
Yes.
Big tradition, obviously inspired by Michael Long, who, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he walked from, was it Adelaide to Darwin? I think he did this massive walk to obviously raise some much needed awareness around, Indigenous issues and sort of raising those to Parliament. So, incredible. He's had his health battles, but obviously a legend of the Bombers. And I think it's worth noting as well that these clubs both have greats of the game that are Indigenous players. So whether it's the Riolis on the Richmond side, or whether it's obviously Michael Long and Alwyn Davey, and there's just been some great crackers. There's been some great ones, Sam, and certainly the tradition continues, which we're very excited for.
All right, ins and outs for this game. Angus Clark, Jade Gresham and Matt Guelphy come in for Essendon. Out Dylan Shield, Sard Ahoy and Archer Day Wicks. Richmond have named Campbell Gray, Samson Ryan and Morris Rioli. Out Noah Bolter, Tom Lynch and Toby Nankervis. I love how the AFL's put personal reason under that, but we all know it's because of the curfew.
and you need to keep saying it. To keep saying it. Yeah.
What do we think about the changes there? And look, surely Essendon come out after last week's effort.
Look, not that it guarantees the result, because Richmond have been in a lot of the games that they've played this season really up to their necks, and I think that's really worth acknowledging. You're starting to see Adamuse's brand. They're really exuberant Tigers. A lot of energy, a lot of passion. They make mistakes, but they're exciting to watch, and they just take on the game. So you really got to give it to them for doing that. But on the Essendon side of the ledger, you said it, Sam, as I said, may not guarantee the result, but certainly just the effort, the intensity, the system, it's all got to be there this week. And as you said, the Dons have got to come out all guns blazing and really put up a much better performance than that. And this is a big stage. These games are privileges, Sam. Essendon shouldn't take for granted that they get put into these special slots, Anzac Day included. So you want to come there and you want to put up a really good fight in front of a big crowd. So this is another one of those examples. And look, I like the ins. I think Matt Guelphy, just speaking about him, he's had his hamstring issues, but he's just one of those pressure forwards, sort of plays as a medium tall, and I think that's exactly what the Bombers have been crying out for. Isaac Kako has had to sort of, almost sacrifice his goal sneaky sense just to be a pressure forward. So it's good that obviously the Dons have a bit of support there, and Jade Gresham provides that as well, and obviously he's been sort of one of the marquee poster boys for this week with his Indigenous heritage too, which is fantastic. So yeah, they're good ins for the Dons. The outs for Richmond though, a couple of really important tall figures there. Tom Lynch has been in good form. Obviously Toby Nankervis, their captain. And yeah, I mean, that's just, there's a lot of tall timber in there, Sam, that goes out of the team, which is pretty hard. But it also means that there's going to be a lot more youngsters playing, and we'll have to just see how they play from a leadership perspective on the field.
Yep, no, definitely. I feel I'm kind of leaning towards the Bombers in this one. I think you'll have to, but I reckon this is going to be another classic game. This is going to be down to the wire. We've had a few ones, I think, in recent times. But I think the Bombers will get up.
Yeah, got to tip the Dons, but I think if the Tigers are up to it, Sam, I hate to say it, but we saw what they've done to certain teams at the G. So you wouldn't want to sleep on the Tigers. Let's put it that way.
She'll get a good crowd too. I'd love to see maybe 70 or 80.
I think so. I think despite the teams being in somewhat of a rebuild mode, I think you're right. I think this fixture is a very special one. So yeah, I'd expect a big crowd over 70.
All right, Super Saturday begins at 12:35. Very early one. Carlton v GWS Giants at Marvel Stadium. Ends for Carlton, Harry O'Farrell, Lockie Fogarty, Tom De Koning, Blake Acres and Sam Doherty. So Harry O'Farrell, a debut, 198 centimetres if you don't mind. A big, tall defender comes in. Elijah Hollins out, Jack Silvani, Mark Pitternet, Francis Evans and Jordan Boyd. Geez, unlucky was Silvani. Just keeps getting a groin injury, so that's going to be another week or two. Look, I feel a bit sad for Pitternet. He's come in and I think he did okay, but DeConey comes back in. He's been in good form. So, and the Doc, we get to see him a bit more.
Gotta love
GWS, that. Giants, Lee Kalia, Harry Rouston out, Finn Callahan, and Toby McMullen. Interesting fixture, this one. The Giants at Marvel Stadium against, I feel like it's been pretty back and forth between us there. So, a must win for the Blues after giving the Sydney game away in the last quarter. Really disappointing, that one. Just bad luck at the SCG. It was another cursed ground, but we had that game. We had that game and we just gave it up. So very disappointing. And then the Giants, on the other hand, losing a strange one to Freo at home. It's just a strange activity last weekend, Michael.
Yeah, Giants are really one of those bizarrely out of form teams. And I know they had a bit of a slump last year and they really came home like a house on fire, but yeah, Sam, they're just really not playing good footy right now. Lack of connection, just really dour. There's just something up there, and a couple of these outs really concern me this particular week. You are right that these two teams match up in a really strange way. There's been some like GWS have taken a few off you. You've taken a few off them. Yeah. It's been relatively even. Gosh, it's the name a random player from the Draft Cup. I feel like there's just been so much exchange between these two clubs as well. But look, as far as a tip, I mean, I'm probably leaning just slightly more towards Carlton back at home. You didn't do too much wrong against the Swans, as you said. Probably a mix of inaccuracy, but just also not being able to close the game off, which is super disappointing. The Swans were very, very gettable. And I just haven't seen enough from the Giants this year, particularly in Melbourne, to be really, up and about. And they are out of form, and I am concerned about their out, Sam. Okay.
Yeah, I hope the Baggers can get it done. It was just weird. I watched this thing with Lee Montagna early in the week, and he was showing the stats compared to the 2024 Brisbane Lions at this stage, and there are a lot of things that we are very, very similar in, and we're leading the competition in a lot of areas. So there's a lot of things that we're doing right, especially defensively. It's just the scoring's the problem, the inside 50 conversion. We're still just flopping it up to the tools, and I feel like we've just got to take a couple more seconds, think about it a bit more creatively when we're entering it into the 50. And using, because we got no problem getting the ball up the ground and that kind of thing. We've just got to think a bit more clever when we're going inside 50s, and getting some of these smaller players into the game, I think is the key, because don't get me wrong, I love the tools, but if we can make some of the smaller guys happen and have some of that kind of mosquito brigade that we used to have,
Yeah, you got to, Sam. But just quickly on the tours, what about that goal from Charlie? What was that? Maybe 3 steps. The ball drop looked kind of funny, but he just absolutely pumped it from outside 50. That guy is a legitimate freak.
On the turn. Like, I get terrified every time he does that. He doesn't, if it's outside 50 or something, he doesn't go back for a set shot. He just uses his momentum to push it through. It's a very strange thing.
Phenomenal. It really is. He's really one of the only guys in the comp that can do it. But it's almost Buddy Franklin-esque, isn't it? Buddy used to go on a really big arc, but the fact that Charlie can do it so laconically off a couple of steps, it's very impressive.
4:15 MCG, Hawthorn take on the Brisbane Lions. Oh, what a game this one will be.
Cracker.
4th versus 2nd on the ladder as it stands currently. Hawthorn have named Jarman Impey, Jack Gunston, Lloyd Meek and Connor Nash, out Ned Reeves, Bailey McDonald, Finn McGuinness and Cal Shadir. What was big ins for them. Brisbane Lions, Devon Robinson, Jared Berry come in, out Kadeem Coleman and Connor McKenna. Wow. Now, we mentioned last week that we were starting a little bit of fear for Hawthorn, that they could be slipping away a little bit, just a little bit, thinking that they're, being a young side and into this second year of trying to stay around and up with the big guys. feel like in that sense, this is a big opportunity for them and a must win for their kind of whole psyche around finals and the like. And then another chance on Brisbane Lions. A bit shaky there. I know the word. I haven't said the word, but the premiership hangover talk has been the talk this week after the draw against the Roos and Melbourne coming out of nowhere at the Gabba.
Yeah, wow.
It does make you question. It's just a bit of a little hump in the season. You know, it may not be a hangover, but teams after they won a flag, there'll be a few things that they slip up on the next year. It's just inevitable.
Oh, absolutely it is. They're only human. I mean, you know, they haven't had the lead in to the season like other teams have. And, you know, put simply, you got to ask yourself, like, how hungry are you, you know, round 10 at home against a team that they should be beating? The answer was clearly not enough. And, you know, just how hard have they done their homework and how hard have they hit the track this week? You wonder, you know, with a quality opponent like Hawthorn who aren't going exactly, you know, all guns blazing right now, but are still sitting, you know, in the top 4 pretty comfortably. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see Brisbane's response. But, Sam, I tell you what, this is a real defining month for Hawthorn. After the Gold Coast game, they've obviously got Brisbane this weekend, then they've got Collingwood, the Bulldogs, Adelaide, and then they get a couple of easy games against North Melbourne and St Kilda. But, yeah, those kind of, you know, if they can break even over this next month, I think that'll really place them because then I think right towards the end of the season they've got Brisbane again, they've got Collingwood again, and then they've got Adelaide again, and they've got the Baggers. So, you know, it's a funny kind of 7-8 weeks worth of fixture there where they've got a couple of easy kills but then have some quite hard games at the very pointy end and obviously right now. So, look, they're in a very good spot. You know, they should be breaking even in a lot of those games. And if they do, Sam, dare we say it, I think, you know, they're obviously a lock for finals if they can do that. And look, they're more than capable. But as you said there, like, is it those second-year blues? Teams that go to homework a little bit more on what you've done. Yeah. And, you know, do some of those young players just kind of not have as much gas in the tank? Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. But, I mean, yeah, like, do we get a good crowd to this game, Sam?
Oh yeah, I think this would be.
I think a lot of neutrals should be getting along to this.
If I wasn't playing at Victoria Park at the exact same time, I'd be over. Workers Club Lions.
Shout out.
We'll mention that a bit later.
Bring the flag.
I wonder if you could put a drone up. You could see both of our games at the same time. Not that far.
Hey, that's an idea. Just look at the flying laws before that, kids.
So
who are you tipping, Sam? Oh, fuck. I was hoping you'd go first. Look, I'm going to tip. Shit, I'm going to tip Hawthorn in this, but not overly confidently, Sam. I mean, I'd expect a response from Brisbane, but at home, the Hawks, God, you'd think they wouldn't drop this at the G, but I don't know.
This is going to be close, but I'm going to swing the other way. I'm going to tip the Lions.
I think
the hoodoo of now that they've won a flag there, the MCG does not scare them anymore.
No, and they bet Richmond there earlier this year, so, you know.
Yeah. Saturday night, we move on to 7:35 back at Marvel Stadium for the second one there. North Melbourne take on Collingwood. Paul Curtis and Zach Fisher named for North Melbourne. Out Bailey Scott, Zane Dersma. What is a big in. Zach Fisher, haven't seen him in a while. Collingwood, William Hayes out. Steele side bottom. Interesting one, this one. Well done to the Kangaroos last weekend. How good was that to see? They
held on. You know, Clarko was honest in his press conference, wasn't he, Sammy boy? He just said, like, that's not a game that's going to be, you know, shared at the USA AFL Combine in Texas. This is our marquee game. That's not going to happen. Shout out, by the way. That's going to be awesome. Couple of clubs going to scout out US talent. Will I be going? Unlikely. But it would be, I'm just, you know, if anyone's listening and wants to sponsor that, hey, I'd be down. They've got some good brisket out there, Sammy boy. So, hey, we love that. Shout out. But no, look, I mean, it was a pretty ugly. I mean, you were at the game, Sammy. Ugly kind of a game, but just obviously good to see a win.
Costly. I think there were many chances where they probably could have gave it away. Well, almost did gave it away, and Richmond weren't punishing them on the turnover. So, look, a bit sloppy, but sometimes you've just got to get the win and learn to win, even in games like that where it's just nothing's going right. So I think being back at home at Marvel again, and of course getting the big man Paul Kurz, I think they've really grown. Over
You're
the
big
last
on
2
Paul
weeks.
Kurz, aren't you, Sammy boy?
I think he's great. He's great. The last 3 weeks they've had, I think the whole us against the world, with him being ruled out and everyone against them, the last couple of weeks I really think they've grown as a club in a little bit. And some of the younger players getting up and about. Finbar, the Moose, exciting.
I love it.
So I think we're starting to see little drips and drabs. I know it's a pretty ordinary start to the season, but I just want to give a shout out to my mate Josh, who was at the game with me.
Great footage.
It was the first time he's seen a win in the flesh since 2019. Can you believe that?
Are you serious?
Yes. And the first time North has won at the G since 2017. So,
mate. That is good on him. Seriously, sport can be freaking unforgiving at times.
Yeah.
We both know it. But we complain when we lose a final. I mean, I certainly do. But I mean, it's just like, but then you put it into perspective and you're like, this team hasn't won at the MCG, the home of footy, since 2017. That's wild.
Yeah.
8
They don't
years.
play there much, but
They don't, but they play there every season, and so they haven't. Surely, Sammy.
Maybe there's
Right,
got to have at least
Collingwood,
one. Yeah,
one of the big clubs. But I mean, not to win there at all. I mean, since 2017. So this is the thing about sport. Like, that means a lot, and when you put it into perspective like that, that's huge for the fans. And he actually looked pretty emotional too, which is just beautiful to see.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to do something crazy.
Okay.
I'm back in the Kangaroos in.
Holy shit, Sammy boy. Oh, my God.
I've got a feeling. I remember there was a game a couple of seasons ago. I think
was.
It might even been last year. Where they've been close. Collingwood don't play at Marvel too much.
Yep.
And look, they haven't slipped up apart from the first game, and I feel like they could just waltz into this game not really thinking much about it. And right when the Kangaroos are on a hop, I don't know, could get them. Wouldn't that be something?
Oh, that would be the best, mate. That you'd get retirees out of a few guys from North. You'd have a whole, lap of honour. I mean, it would be huge. It'd be huge. Just give them the Premiership Cup. That's what I say. But look, I'm not as ballsy as you. I'm going to tip the Pies, but I mean, the Pies haven't done much wrong, have they? God, they've been in really good form, and they've been able to actually rest a lot of players too, which has been the real feature of this season. And that win against Adelaide. Adelaide are really good form.
Not ready.
It's wild, isn't it? It's wild. But no, Collingwood, one of the informed teams in the comp. So, as you said, if North can knock them off this week, this would be the upset of all upsets. But you're right, it has been building for a couple of seasons. I feel like they do match up weirdly well. So, would it surprise me? Yes, it would surprise me. But, oh, geez, Sammy boy, be good to see, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be fantastic. The other game on Saturday night, 8:10 p.m, Fremantle taking on Port Adelaide. Changes for Port Adelaide: Brandon Zirk, Thatcher in, Travis Boak, Rory Atkins and Hugh Jackson out. Zava Radicale, Lockie Jones, Josh Sin, Jason Horn-Francis, which is disappointing for them.
Yeah.
Big Hornet. Fremantle have made no changes. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know which way to swing with this one because both teams
really
have
struggling
been
too.
Fairly inconsistent. And I would say maybe at a similar level, maybe Fremantle just a tad a bit higher. But Strange one. The only thing that leans towards me with any kind of tip here is the fact that it's at Optus Stadium and Freo. And the fact maybe Freo have beaten GWS, I would say big scalp for them away from home. So that would be the only thing. But I really don't know what to say about this one.
Yeah, I think great minds think alike. If I do say so myself in this, Sammy, I was almost thinking the tagline of the two most disappointing teams of this season, just based on where we all potentially thought they were. Obviously, you predicted the power outage very early on, and that should be noted. But but I think, Port playing a prelim last year, and Fremantle don't want for much, and so you sort of think both clubs should be in the pecking order, and they really haven't been. As you said, not taking anything away from Fremantle's win last week. That was really impressive, especially I honestly thought that game was at Optus, and then I was like, oh shit, it's actually in Sydney, and so an even more impressive win to do that. I know the Giants are out of form, but they only bet the Cats a couple of weeks ago, and the Cats are in good form. So, and, by the way, just quickly, the circle of parody has been completed, which
yes.
I thought we'd throw that in there. That's. I know we're going to get to the West Coast game later, but that's fantastic. I love seeing how every team's bet every team, so we love to see that.
Early on, hasn't it?
It has, relatively.
Just shows how even the comp is.
Mate,
Maybe.
I
Could be
mean,
wrong.
yeah, I reckon so, Sammy boy. Look, I'm gonna lean towards Fremantle in this one, just purely based on, as you said, geographical location, Western Australia. But yeah, God, Port.
Big losses for Port, losing James.
Big losses at home too, but also that the loss last week to Geelong by 76 points at home, just because of where Port were expected to finish, I think, by some this year. You got to say that's probably worse than the Essendon loss, and I'm only saying that just because of the fact that I think the expectation should have been higher for Port this season. So that was a really disappointing loss at home, and I don't know if fans were burning their never tear us apart scarves, but it's getting dire there, I think. So they really need to step up the power.
Sunday, we move on to 1:10 p.m. Adelaide taking on the West Coast Eagles. Marvel Stadium, Luke Pedlar, Sid Draper and Billy Dowling named for Adelaide at the moment. The extended lineups: Noah Long, Archer Reid, Bo Allen, Clay Hall and Tyrell Dewar. Out Jamie Cripps and Matthew Owies. Good to see the Eagles get a win as well.
Very good. Obviously, we know it's on the back of quite a lot of emotion, and that's the AFL world has been in mourning all week. So obviously our condolences from In the Ballpark to the Selwood family, and yeah, just I highlighted it in one of my vlogs. Just put your arm around a mate. Tell people in your life that you love them, and never sleep on mental health in any circumstance. So worth acknowledging, and there are helplines in Australia and abroad to tap into for that. There's fantastic support out there. But yeah, look, West Coast, they notch up their first win. We didn't know when it was going to come. I think we both may have had an inkling that maybe St Kilda were gettable, and they certainly were. And look, they played on emotion. Ironically, Minnie McWalter gets his first win against his old side, St Kilda, where of course he played during the 09 era. And wow, was he a tagger? I can't remember, but he was definitely an under player, sort of underrated kind of type, I think. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, look, I think Adelaide too strong in this one, but very, very good win by the Eagles, and you wouldn't sleep on them either, Sammy boy.
No, I think it's just a bit of boost of confidence for them. So I think these games are going to get harder for opposition. But Adelaide for me, pretty comfortably. MCG 3:20 Sunday afternoon. Melbourne take on the Sydney Swans. Oh, the Melbourne boys were happy. Did you see them? They were having a beer after the game at the Gabba in the rooms, which is something you don't often see. I think
don't often see it, but good on them. They've had a really hard season, Sam. So look, that's the win of the season for them. So why not celebrate?
Yeah. Changes for them: Jake Lever, Bailey Laurie, and Jai Cully named in. No outs named of yet. For Sydney, Callum Mills, Hayden McLean, Taylor Adams, Ben Patton, Caleb Mitchell, Ned Broman in the extended. out Justin McInerney, Joel Amadi, and Aaron Francis. So weird spot, both of these.
Yeah.
At maybe a similar level, disappointing start to the season for both of these clubs. Still not really convinced by Sydney much. And Melbourne's starting to show us some signs. I just feel like this game's going to be a slop. It's not going to be a very entertaining one. I'm going to pick the Demons. Not confident in Sydney, and I think this little bounce back for the Demons they're gonna get on a little roll here.
I think they are too, Sam. I'm kind of agreeing with you on the Ds. I think that was a really impressive performance. I think what it really highlighted was just how important Jake Malcolm is in their forward line. I mean, he's just so dynamic, and he can play like a lockdown role on like a key defender like a Harris Andrews, or he can, sort of be mobile himself and really get off the chain and kick some really crafty goals. He can play, sort of tall, medium, small, and he's just a really good utility forward who's just been a really key component for them and often unheralded. I certainly loved him when he was a Dons player. So, shout out to him. But yeah, certainly the D's just, got it all together over the weekend, and it was a great win by them. And obviously Max Gawn just continues to get better and just continues to just be the star that he is. I mean, you wonder where he'll poll in the Brownlow as well. I mean, I think a lot of people are sort of, saying that Merritt might be up there, Cripper again.
Pretty open.
Yeah, I think it is. Even Bailey Smith, after his performances, I think he's going to really feature well. Obviously, the Dacos boys, Nick in particular, but yeah, I think it's very open too. Lockie Neal could be another one, but yes, he was brilliant as well, Maxi Gawn. So yeah, going to tip the D's in this one, but yeah, not overly convinced. It's a funny old time slot, isn't it?
Yeah, D's for me. 4:40 p.m, the final game of the round, Marvel Stadium, St Kilda versus the Gold Coast Suns. Extended changes for the moment. Isaac Keeler, Zach Jones, Hunter Clark, Liam Henry, Angus Hasty, Hugh Boxall, and Max Heath named in for St Kilda. Outs, Angus McLennan, Jack McRae, Lance Collard, Hugo Garcia. Big loss for Saints. Jack McRae, punctured lung. It turned out. So a couple of weeks for him on the sidelines now, unfortunately. Gold Coast Suns, Ethan Reid, Sean Lemon and Ben Jepson named in for the moment. Interesting. Can we see the Saints bounce back here? I know the curse, the Dimma. He hates coming here. He hates Marvel. And at a crucial time for the Suns where they're really looking like they're on the edge of playing finals, they need to get the hoodoo getting rid of. Because I know they played the game earlier in the season here and they lost that one. So
yep, this is like the line in the sand, St Kilda Beach. Like they need to go and literally draw a sign at St Kilda Beach. Just put the line down near McDonald's, and they just need to do it. They need to do it, Sammy. They need to win ugly. They need to win glitzy. It doesn't matter. They just need to win. They just need to win because St Kilda play very well at Marvel, and they'll be wanting a bigger performance here. So this is the early acid test for Gold Coast. Are they the real deal? Because this is typically the time in the season where stuff starts to go south for them. So this is a massive opportunity for them. So I'm tipping the Sunnies, but I think the Saints, turn it into a bit of a slog, and if they turn it into a slog, I think anyone can win. But gosh, it's one of those games. It could be ugly.
Could be ugly. Who are you tipping?
The Suns.
Suns, yep. Suns for me as well. And that's an exciting round 11. Wow. Almost getting to a couple of buys coming up in the next few weeks. So starting to see the jigsaw puzzles kind of fit into place. Wow, it's going to be amazing. Also, a reminder, Pub Footy's back this weekend. So 4:15 p.m. Saturday afternoon. Victoria Park, the Workers Club Lions, which I'm playing for, are taking on the Vic Hotel Galahs. So another entertaining one. I got beaten up the last one. I got a big bruise to the nose and the cheekbones. But we battle on.
Nothing a cold one can't fix, Sammy boy.
No, nothing a cold one can't fix. That is absolutely correct. Oh, all right. Another big weekend. Thanks for listening. Give us a rate and review. Share us around and stay up to date across all our social media. Thanks for listening.
Appreciate it, everyone. We'll see you next week.
For all your news, reviews, and previews this AFL season,
Listen to In the Ballpark. Download the podcast now.